What is up, gamers? It is your boy HamFam, and today we are talking about Utopia in My White Tee, the first full-length studio album by Travis Scott in 5 years. Now I'm just gonna go right out the gate and say it, I fully expected this thing to suck. Not only because it's been so long, but because anything that Travis has been featured on, or any of his recent singles that he's released leading up to this, I have not been too keen on. Although I did like Franchise, pretty much anything else felt like he was just phoning it in and like riding the high off of Astroworld, which, don't get me wrong, is a good high to ride on. Astroworld was one of two of the biggest albums of my high school experience, the other being Beer Bongs and Bentleys by Post Malone, which is also interesting because he also dropped on the same day, although I've not listened to that because I have no willpower to. But I was really interested to see what Travis Scott would bring to the table after 5 years, because I really did become a fan after Astroworld, and I really enjoyed the psychedelic, holistic soundscape, crazy experience that he created through that. And also I just think his voice and his style really stands out from his contemporaries, although it seemed like, again, leading up to this, he was kind of phoning it in, just sort of doing the same thing that he usually does. So I was worried that this album would just be an Astroworld 2, because I don't think Astroworld actually aged the greatest. I thought it would be a flop if he did that. But thankfully, the best part about this album is actually Travis Scott himself. He comes through with a lot of fire, a lot of grit, and he actually raps, which is awesome. Coming into this album, I was expecting another grand, cohesive, thematic experience akin to Astroworld, and that was just apparent to me through the marketing, through like the briefcases and everything he was talking about leading up to this. And I know Travis is like a visionary of sorts, so I know he wanted to create some holistic experience. But that actually wasn't the case for this album. I think he only mentions Utopia once, or like the idea of Utopia, a couple of times. And so the theme and the cohesion isn't really there for me, which is actually fine because I think the individual tracks here are amazing, dark, gritty, experimental, fun, and occasionally emotional. It just feels like the track listing itself was sort of tossed on as an afterthought and is held together with like Elmer's glue. Going into the individual tracks themselves, I think Hyena is a fine opener. Not too great, not too bad. I love how loud and abrasive the drums are, and I love how he comes in with such aggression when he's rapping. The instrumental itself kind of just loops and doesn't really go anywhere, and for like an opener for an album like this, I want a little more oomph. And then Thank God is another good cut that comes next. It's super glitchy, super weird, and I love how heavenly the chorus sounds with KC. And I love the switch up in the middle when it goes to violin. It sounds great, and then he comes back again with that aggression, those sick flows, super sick beats, and a glitchy outro to end it off. And then we go into Modern Jam, which the first time I heard it, I laughed out loud. I thought it was the funniest thing ever. And funnily enough, I'm actually a sucker for just a beat in Travis's voice, so I actually really like the song, and I especially like how crazy the feature is on here. Tizo Touchdown, he adds a lot to it with his screams, and I just like how simple the instrumental is and how he just gets his point across just doing something weird. The next track, My Eyes, took me by surprise because it sounded like some weird Frank Ocean, Bon Iver, Minecraft sound palette. And Bon Iver is actually on the song and on another one on this album. And it's funny that I reacted to him on this channel, and he's always popping up in random rapper songs, even though his own music is a lot more mellow and tame in comparison. But I can see where they take the weirdness from when they're inspired by him. But I really do like how soft the song is. I do think the vocals at the first part are a little much for me, a little too whiny, a little too pitched up, but then when it switches into the second half through an awesome 30-second like transition between the beats, and then he just goes hard, and then he talks about his life and the recent events in his past couple years, and you all know what happened, so it was interesting seeing his perspective and being like, yo, this is my life. And then the song God's Country is probably my least favorite on the album, just because I cannot stand that la 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 beat in the background. I hate that voice. Every time it starts, I'm like, ugh. And not only that, it kind of just sounds like a leftover cut from Astroworld anyway. It doesn't really add anything new to the album or say anything too crazy, so I'm not too much of a fan of this one. But then we got Sirens right after this, which I love this one. Love how aggressive it is. That looping sample and those clackety drums are super awesome. And then I love the way he loops that voice at the end to go, only to go into the beat itself. Just super cool. And then I also like the way he says yall. Meltdown features Drake and feels like a Sicko Mode Part 2 in a way, featuring Drake, of course, and then beat switches. And it's kind of weird. I don't really like the idea of the song because I always feel like any song that would come after Sicko Mode in that style would just live in its shadow, but I do kind of see where they're coming from, and I do think it stands out on its own, even though it doesn't quite reach the same high in my opinion, but I also don't think it was trying to. I love the whispered vocals from Drake, and then I love how it transitions between each section with like a really loud bass pad. And then I love that Star Wars TIE Fighter sample, like the meow 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 meow. I think the violins work really great. They're both doing their thing and it sounds fantastic. Fiend I also don't really like in the track listing. I think it's trying way too hard, and Playboy Cardi is trying way too hard, and it just does not sound good. It sounds too loud and doesn't even sound like a song that you could even party to, because it just sounds like a mess and nobody would want to listen to it. Del Resto Echoes is pretty good. I like the feature from Beyonce, and I like the club sort of beat, house beat in the background. It works more for me as like an interlude than like a full complete track, but I do enjoy it for what it is and don't mind it anytime I hear it. Then we go to I Know, which is probably one of my favorites on the album. The piano melody in the background is just too good, and I love how Travis is singing on this one, and it even sounds like he's drunk while he's doing it, and he even says, "Then again, I may be drunk. He's wanting this girl, man." Utopia Twins is kind of probably the most basic song on here. It's kind of like a classic Travis Scott banger, but I do enjoy it, and I do enjoy the 21 Savage feature as well. I think he goes hard. Circus Maximus, I enjoyed the first couple times I listened to it, but I think the sample gets a bit old of Black Skinhead, and then he doesn't really change up his flow or doing anything different throughout the song. It kind of just is the same thing until The Weeknd comes on, and then even though he's cool, it doesn't really add much or do much. It sort of seems like he was just like tacked on at the end. And then I also really like the weird glitchy outro with like the wee, but listening to it over and over again, it doesn't have the same power that it did on the first time. Parasail is a fine interlude, but it's kind of just like, why is it even here? It doesn't really add much, and it's not that great of a song to justify it being here in the first place, but whatever. Schizo is 6 minutes long, and it's kind of basic, but I don't know, I kind of like the length of it. I like the Young Thug feature, and even though it is really long, it has 3 distinct sections, and I enjoy them all equally, and it's kind of a good song to just turn off your brain to and just casually listen to. Lost Forever is another good one. I love how creepy and brooding this is, especially in the second half with Wet Side Gun. It sounds so like horror movie-esque, with a bunch of noises going on in the background with like a very high-pitched note just playing throughout. Very cool, very neat. Love, I really liked on first listen. I loved that banging beat, but coming back to it, I feel like it almost doesn't go hard enough, if that's even possible. But I almost feel like he painted himself in a corner in this one, and I swear to God, if you can see that fucking fly in the recording, I'm gonna shoot myself. K-pop, lame single, lame Weekend feature. Bad Bunny, I don't really like the song. It's fine as where it is, but it doesn't really add anything. It's a snooze fest, basically. But Telekinesis is a banger. I love how dreamy it sounds, And of course, SZA at the end there, just singing her heart out. It makes for a really great track. I really like the wow, 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 wow pads just carrying the whole song. And then with Future and the auto-tuned chorus, it all sounds super heavenly and is a great track. And then the last track, Till Further Notice, is also really good. I love how bass synth heavy the song is as well, and I like the return of 21 Savage, and it's just a nice, focused, hard-hitting closer for the end of this album. Overall, while I did like quite a large chunk of songs on this album, I still felt like I was wanting more, even as the album is an hour and 17 minutes long. To me, this album feels like, again, a collection of awesome, great songs that don't really fit together well as like a cohesive narrative piece. And then also the songs individually themselves either play it too safe or with their experimentation don't go hard enough. I feel like songs like My Eyes and Modern Jam are examples of songs that do it perfectly, but other ones like Schizo, even though I do like that track, and Del Estro, I feel like just play it a bit too safe and could have come out back when Astroworld came out 5 years ago. So it's almost like, why did we wait 5 years for some of these tracks when he's kind of just doing it in the same style, although it is really good. But yeah, I was kind of just wanting more, but what we did get, I did really enjoy, and I'm excited to see what he does to follow it up again. Right now for this album, I'm feeling a strong 6 to a light 7, and I'm also really interested to see how this album will age for me. Yeah, let's go.